the morning show here on Arise News. The Buhari administration has been trying to implement a number of reforms to deal with the cumulative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Nigerian economy. These include the new but controversial Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, last week's upward review of the pump prices of petroleum products, introduction of service-reflective tariffs in the electricity sector, as well as other actions geared towards reflating the economy. We are now being joined for more in-depth analysis by Mustapha Chike-Obi, Chairman, Fidelity Bank, Nigeria, and the former Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Access Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON. Welcome to the program, Mustapha Chike-Obi. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, quickly, we'd like to have your comments on the burning issue, if you like, topical issues of the increase in the pump price of petroleum products, which Labour and 79 other civil society organizations are kicking against, and also the hike in electricity tariffs, which at the moment is also a source of concern for many Nigerians who say that in the context of COVID-19, it is insensitive for government to be increasing prices. And then I saw something you wrote, maybe you take this along with it, on refineries and price hikes. You said the belief that refineries will lead to cheap PMS is not supported by facts. Nothing major produced in Nigeria has ever been cheaper than the foreign alternative. Not sugar, rice, textiles, flour, or even cement. Importation of PMS will be banned, and we will pay for more eventually. So if you can take all of this together and then defend this statement that I just read out.
Okay, nice to see you again.
Yes.
It's been a long time.
Good to see you.
Look, there's never a good time for difficult reforms. There's always a reason to put it off. So I think we need to separate the reforms themselves from the timing. And I agree that the government has work to do in terms of building trust and in also communicating the reasons for their actions better. But the reforms themselves, on the standalone basis, they make sense. Nigeria can no longer afford the subsidies that it's been paying, and I mentioned the triple subsidies of foreign exchange, electricity, and PMS. And there's no time you remove any of those subsidies that people will not say, well, why didn't you wait? You could have waited and all that. This is actually the correct time to do it, even though it appears to be going to be very hard for a lot of people, because the Nigerian revenue scenario is drying up. And you don't wait for the fire to burn down your house before you start, calling for the fire people to come and help you. Once you see the fire, I think that's the time to start trying to put it out. So I commend the federal government for doing what makes economic sense. I agree that there's not a good time to do it because you're taking something from people. But I also think that the government should have done a better job in communicating what the benefits to the populace in the long run will be. So as we're removing these subsidies, we are taking these subsidies to build better roads. We're using these subsidies to fix electricity problem. We're using these subsidies to create a more viable economy. And at 2, 3, or 4, or 5 years down the road, everybody will see the benefits of these subsidies being removed and being deployed in a more sustainable fashion. So I am totally in support. I have been calling for subsidies removal for many years, and I will not, because of politics, criticize an action that I think makes sense. About the refineries, the best analogy for the refineries is cement. Everything to make cement, gypsum, everything is in Nigeria. Yet Nigerian cement is more expensive than the foreign alternative. We had to ban importation of bagged cement in order for the cement companies in Nigeria to thrive. So the notion that if we refine petroleum in Nigeria, it will be cheaper than petroleum refined in Belgium or Denmark or Holland, say, is not supported by any facts. Our textile industries couldn't compete. None of our industries can compete with the foreign alternatives. What we need to do is address the root cause of our non-competitiveness. We need to address the reasons why everything we make in Nigeria is either lesser quality or more expensive than its foreign alternative. And those things are power, cost of transportation. Transporting a container from China to Apapa is cheaper than transporting the same container from Apapa to Kano. We need to address the infrastructure issues, which, again, have come from bad management for the last 15, 20 years. It's not a matter of any immediate government. We need to start addressing those issues. Infrastructure, financing, and we need to address education. We need to teach people how to make things and make them efficiently. Until we deal with those things, the solution of banning the foreign equivalent so that the local one can survive is always going to make us pay more.
And what do you say to those who argue and say, as long as you have, for instance, the Petroleum Equalization Fund, as long as you continue to import exported crude to the country, then this is not subsidy. As long as you have the regulator, NNPC, still having a say in price band monthly, then this is not subsidy removal, this is not deregulation. What do you say to people like that?
My answer is very simple. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. Yes, can they do it better? Absolutely. Is it better to do it gradually? Maybe. But the fact that they've taken a step or two towards deregulation is better than taking no steps at all. So all the people that are complaining about the perfect deregulation, I say to them, just be patient. This government has now shown that it's willing to look at reforms. So it's a baby steps. Let's take a step at a time. This is a step towards deregulation, and it's a good step. And yes, there's more steps to take, but you can't take all the steps at once.
Right, good to see you again, Rufai here. So, I just want to posit this and what you think about it. A lot of people that go ahead and say, okay, fix the refineries. If you fix the refineries, the price of petrol, will buy petrol will go down. That means you're saying that argument might be wrong, since you're saying, oh, if new refineries come in, it will even reduce the price of petrol in the first place. And the second question will be, how can we have cost-reflective tariffs in electricity, deregulated, petroleum prices, and still cater to the masses in the country? They are talking about auto gas now. Mm-hmm. Is that going to crack it? I mean, I read extensively about auto gas. It's used in over 16 or 18 countries in the EU, and countries all around the world. They say it's half the price of PMS as always, and things like that. But is that going to crack it, or is still mass infrastructure in place?
I think the underlying notion that you have, and many Nigerians have, is that government has a duty to take care of every little need of everybody. Government cannot do that. What government needs to do is to create an environment so people can earn and support themselves. So we have a very socialist-leaning, let's take care of everybody, attitude, and we can't afford it. I wish we could afford it. I mean, I just came back from Togo, and petroleum in Togo is 2 or 3 times more expensive than PMS in Nigeria. And you say, well, we have petrol in Nigeria. We have crude oil in Nigeria. The thing Nigerians don't realize is that we have a production quota from OPEC. That production quota is the most amount you can produce a day. So whether you give it to your Nigerians or you sell it for dollars, you can't produce, they don't deduct what you used internally from your production quota. So the problem is the best use of your crude oil, 2 million barrels a day, to subsidize Nigerians, or is it best used to get the most dollars you can get and use it to build roads and schools and power? That's the question that's facing us. Look, everybody wants to take care of their children, but you don't buy things for your children that you can't afford. And we love our children. This PMS subsidy that Nigerians think they deserve, why doesn't the government go ahead and buy 100,000 Mercedes-Benz cars and distribute it at subsidized rate to Nigerians? Because it doesn't make sense. So we can't afford to subsidize PMS when our schools are failing. We can't afford to subsidize PMS when we have no power. It's a matter of priorities. We can't afford those things. And much as it bleeds my heart that people are going to have to pay more for transportation and other things, it also warms my heart that this government will direct those resources to a more sustainable Nigeria that our children can be proud of?
Well, earlier on, I'm sure on this issue of petroleum and refining at home or abroad, there are still many questions that people will ask because there is inefficiency in the process at home. Maybe perhaps if we eliminate the inefficiencies, then we wouldn't even need to be talking about landing cost, whatever cost in the PPPRA template. Well, I don't know. But quickly, you talked about subsidy on Forex.
Yes.
What's your assessment of some of the steps taken recently by the Central Bank of Nigeria to have a single exchange rate and to make sure that Forex transactions are far more transparent? One example is the decision taken with regard to Form M, the elimination of third parties to correct the error of over-invoicing or the fraudulent over-invoicing of supplies. And then, of course, we were told this morning, again, front page of this day newspaper, that the Central Bank has directed deposit money banks to post no debit on 38 accounts of companies that have been identified, 38 companies that have been identified as having indulged in Forex fraud.
Well, I think the Central Bank is trying to do two things. The first thing they want to do is they want to eliminate bad behavior as related to the foreign exchange market. The Form M reform is welcome. There's been a lot of over-invoicing. We all know about it, and I think that it's time that stopped. It adds to the cost of doing business in Nigeria, and I think that it's a very good thing that things are properly invoiced, and we can hold people accountable for what they invoice. So that's a very, very welcome step. What is not so welcome to me is the energy spent by the central bank in trying to keep the foreign exchange at some predetermined level. I think that the foreign exchange should be allowed gradually to find a market level. That does a number of things. It conserves our foreign exchange, and we don't spend so much money trying to defend it. And secondly, it allows our local industries to be more price competitive versus the foreign component. If you have a very strong currency, your goods are more expensive than the foreign alternative. That's part of the reasons why I'm skeptical about this refinery business. If our cement cannot be cheaper than foreign imported cement, I still don't see any reason why. The parallels are very clear. Why, if our cement is more expensive than foreign alternative, why would our petroleum refined in Nigeria be any cheaper than the foreign alternative? And the foreign alternatives they're getting their crude oil from North Sea, they're getting it from Norway, and they're importing it and they're refining it there, and they're more efficient. I still don't see the reason why we believe ours will be cheaper, but time will tell. But I think CBN should, A, correct all the fraudulent ways of people taking foreign exchange, but at the same time, they're encouraging it by keeping the currency at an artificially high level. So people have a need to be fraudulent. If it was at the market rate, if the exchange rate was at the market rate, then nobody will have any need to over-invoice or do all those things. So they're fighting a battle that they're tying their one hand behind their backs. But again, I just hope that we move towards a freely floating FX as soon as possible.
Well, you have said there's no right time or a good time for a tough economic decision on an unpopular economic policy. But when you look at unemployment almost at 28%, inflation almost 13%, volatile exchange rate at the moment, would you say that the economic direction of this administration is on the right path? What should be the response in terms of monetary and fiscal responses? Are you impressed?
Well, let me tell you that the biggest problem for Nigeria in general is management. I've had cause to interact recently with the Minister of Finance and with the CBN governor, and I'm very impressed that they mean well. What is missing, in my humble opinion, is we should have a central economic policy that everybody follows. And I think that policy should be double-digit GDP growth. So if we have that central policy and we have somebody who is driving that policy, which is whatever we do, we're doing for double GDP growth, then I think that some of the efforts they're making will be better coordinated. So the CBN governor does what he thinks is properly correct for the monetary policy. But sometimes it is counterproductive with what the Minister of Finance is doing on the fiscal side. I think that a better coordination is needed. I think that they are both doing the best they can, but I don't think it's as coordinated as it could possibly be. If we aim for double-digit GDP, certain things will happen. It will direct monetary policy, it will direct fiscal policy, it will direct tax policy, and that double-digit is the only way to deal with all those things you're talking about. High unemployment, high inflation. You might have to deal with inflation for a little while, but once we are growing at 10%, 12% GDP for 3 or 4 years, we'll be able to employ our young people, we'll be able to raise revenues, we'll be able to do many things that the government needs to do to be on a sustainable path.
I mean, when you said double-digit growth, my ears just went up. How easy or difficult would that be for an economy that's currently on its knees? Because when you even check around pervasively, the so-called countries where they are doing well, they're still doing single digits, maybe in the high numbers, maybe 6 or 7%. How do we do that? And you talked about management and coordination across board. How do we coordinate monetary and fiscal policy? Third insight, I remember you had a back and forth on Twitter as regards debt service ratio of about 99%, and some people went back at you on Twitter. Despite that, borrowing is still one way a lot of people are citing. I mean, the Emir was speaking, the former Emir of Kano was speaking on Rise TV, and he talked about the fact that to get out of this COVID-19 quagmire and this economic stagnation, we still need to borrow. Is that the way to go?
Well, let me say a few things. The U.S. this year will have debt to GDP of 100% this year, and next year it'll be higher than that. Next year, I think they're looking at 120% debt to GDP. That's one. The second thing, and Nigeria is nowhere near there. So when the Minister of Finance says we don't have a debt problem, but we have a revenue problem, she's correct. So the issue is how do we raise revenues while managing our debt service in the short run? That's the challenge she has, and I think she's approaching those challenges as best as she can. But that's the challenge. Our debt ratio is not that high compared to America, even America. Now, the question you asked for, how easy is this to do double-digit growth? It's very, very difficult. It requires sacrifice from everybody. And they won't like me for this, but there's no need for the president or any governor to have a 100-car convoy or 20-car convoy when they're going somewhere. We need to cut governance and make everybody see that the president, the governors, everybody are sacrificing for this goal of double-digit growth. If we make all those sacrifices, if we cut the cut of governors, if we direct things to the proper places, I think that we're going to be able to have some breathing room. We need time. This will take 5 to 10 years. But people are not making sacrifices. People are not, they want the poor people to make sacrifices. And then you look at the governors, and you see them with 30-car convoys, and they live wonderful lives, and they fly around in private jets. So, yes, it's doable, it's difficult, but it requires sacrifice from every single sector of the economy, starting at the top. Look at the fights to the death over the Edo governorship. Edo is an average state, but they're fighting to death over the governorship because the rewards of being a governor are so high. We should make the rewards of being a governor or a minister much less attractive so that the people that do it for love of country, service of country, not for the benefits they're going to get. So the short answer is it's going to be very difficult. Is it doable? Definitely doable with the right leadership.
All right. I also talked about, real quickly, 99% debt service ratio at a point in this country, and they need to borrow more.
I think that we need to borrow more, but I think we can manage our debt service so that it can get down to 60%. I am aware that there's steps being taken to reduce the debt service component of the debt. I think that I shouldn't speak too much about it, but I think that in the next month or so, you will see concrete plans on how to manage the debt service. The debt itself is not excessive. What we need to do is to reduce debt service, borrow some more money, and direct it at areas that will create a sustainable economy. But again, there are discussions in place that I think will be out in the next month or two that will give Nigerians confidence that things are being done in those areas.
Well, you talked about double-digit GDP growth.
Yes, sir.
Well, we hope that someday we'll be able to achieve that. But at the moment, what we've been told by the National Bureau of Statistics is that the Nigerian economy in Q2 2020 contracted by 6.1%. And analysts have said a recession is inevitable by the third quarter. Should Nigerians just accept that as inevitable as a result of COVID-19 and other headwinds, or are there steps that government should take at all levels to try to mitigate the effect on the average Nigerian, considering the fact that during Q2, only two sectors did substantially well, the telcos and the banks?
Look, the COVID-19, and I was one of the people that underestimated the impact of COVID-19, but COVID-19 has been a big blow to everybody in the world. And so, yes, we're going to have a short-term recession. But what the government is doing is what I'm impressed with. This reduction of subsidy will help us get out of the recession quicker. The moves to liberalize the exchange rate and unify it, even though it's proceeding slower than I would like, is a good thing to do. It's always good when your banks are doing well, because your banks are the engine, the capital engine for your economy to grow. So I think there's hope. I think we're going to have a tough time, I said next quarter, even up to the fourth quarter. But I think that the signs I'm seeing is that this government is now willing to listen to experts, is willing to embrace reform. And I think that if those two things continue, I think that you will see that we'll get out of this less painfully than we would otherwise have. But yes, there'll be some pain, and we should all be prepared for some sacrifice in the next 6 months.
Well, you've talked about cutting the cost of governance. In May this year, the federal government talked about implementing the popular Oransayo report, but we haven't heard anything since then. What should we be prioritizing at a moment like this? The prospects for Q3 don't look any better. But what should be the priority here?
The priority should be one. There's symbolic and there's substantive. Symbolically, all the leaders of government should make all Nigerians are aware that they are making sacrifices. They've cut their salaries, they've cut their entourage, they've cut their costs. Those things are symbolic. It doesn't really add up to much. National Assembly should make symbolic gestures to show all Nigerians that we're all in this together. They're not doing that. I saw recently, I haven't confirmed it, that a governor bought a lot of cars for traditional leaders. I think it was my state, they said, because private person bought some cars and they wanted to do better than it. All of those things should be cut out. The symbolic things should be cut out so that people know that everybody's in this together. Substantively, what we must do is find money to spend on infrastructure. Find money to spend on education. Find money to spend on health. Everything else, apart from these three sectors, should be deprioritized. We should not be defending our currency because it's expensive to defend your currency. We should gradually let it find its level. But we should focus on infrastructure, education, and health, because those are the things that will carry us into the future. Consumption should be de-emphasized. I was a little bit distressed that CBN is selling FX because foreign travel will soon start. If people want to travel abroad, let them buy the currency at 600 to 1. I could care less. We should not be using foreign travel and foreign school fees and foreign education and all the things that the middle class enjoy as a basis for our policies. We should direct our policies at sustainable long-term goals for the poorer masses. So if we are selling FX to BDCs because foreign travel is about to start, I think that's the wrong signal. So there are substantive things we can do and there are symbolic things we can do, and they're both equally important.
Let me just get you right. You said we shouldn't defend the currency in a country where we believe in a strong naira?
That belief is the cause of most of the economic woes. Why does China believe in a weak currency? And if their weak currency has propelled their economic gains in the last 30 years. In fact, the biggest fight between America and China is that China continually keeps its currency weak, and America says, no, your currency is too weak. You have an advantage over us because your currency is weak. What the heck do we feel that a strong currency is useful in Nigeria for, except to import foreign goods? So if we weaken our currency, we will find that our goods will become more competitive, we will be able to develop our country, and we'll be able to even export to the ready markets of ECOWAS that are right next to us, crying for Nigerian products.
Well, Mustapha Chike-Obi, I'm sure that somebody listening to you and you saying, well, you couldn't care if the Naira exchanges for 600 Naira to the dollar.
No,
say, well...
I said for the people who are traveling abroad to go to London and shop at Harrods and send their children to schools in London. Those guys should be buying it at whatever the rate is. But we should keep the currency for, like I said, the three things that matter: infrastructure, education, and health in Nigeria, not for foreign travel. I just want to correct that. Okay, thank you very much, Mustapha Chike-Obi, and thank you for always obliging us. Each time we'll come knocking on your door. You're my family.
Thank you very much indeed.